think we're going to make a start, team. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for hopefully what is an informative conversation between us at Mitsubishi Electric Microinstitutional Solutions and our partners at XY Sense. We're really here this afternoon to try and explore the conversation around the future of work and how we get the most out of our commercial real estate buildings, and really try and peel the onion what metrics matter when it comes to measuring how efficient and how occupied our spaces are. So I'm delighted to moderate this session. I'm Sam, and I'm joined by my colleague Andy and Jane. I'll let them introduce themselves in a second, but just to frame why we're here and why we want to have this conversation. On one hand, we know from the data that most commercial buildings are somewhere between 30 to 50% utilised week on week, right? We know that. On the other hand, we also are very acutely aware that big corporate occupiers are making multi-million pound real estate decisions based on sometimes fragmented, sometimes dated, sometimes completely blind data spots. So we want to try and unveil our experience as two organisations that partner together that really can try and help you understand how much space do you need, when do you need it, and what's the impact on how you run your offices. So that's the view. We're going to try and keep it informative and conversational. I'm delighted to be joined by Andy and Jane. Andy, as you're first on my left, can you introduce yourself and your role within Iconics?
Yeah, hi everyone, my name's Andy Dyke, Managing Director of Mitsubishi Electric IDS in the UK, and I look after our global smart buildings approach.
Jane Watson, so the General Manager for XY Sense across the UK and Europe. So we're an occupancy sensor provider and really working with enterprise occupiers to help them understand their space within their own process.
Awesome. Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Jane. So, Andy, I'm going to start with you as the first question. When we look at the commercial real estate space and corporate occupiers, what are some of the big questions that they're trying to answer when it comes to how much space do I need, when do I need it, where do you see the market at the moment?
Yeah, it's an interesting one in terms of looking at overall metrics. Everyone's looking at compliance, got to monitor energy. When it comes to real estate, right sizing is a real challenge. The data sources that are available for understanding how we're using our building are vast. Hopefully as we go through the discussion today, we can touch on what some of those data sources are, with XY Sense being here, a key vendor partner with us in some of those challenges. But understanding having not only the right size buildings, but having the right workspaces that people use is a critical part to workplace success.
Awesome. And Jane, just to build on that, Andy's talked about having the right amount of space at the right time. What's the cost of not doing this right? Like at Mitsubishi Electric, we talk a lot about the famous JLL 330-300 rule, which tries to look at real estate, where a company's most of their costs, and often we talk or that our clients seem to be attracted to energy and real estate. Sometimes we forget the impact that not having the right amount of space has on experience and our people. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, there's definitely a couple of layers to it, and certainly the big one is how much space is needed. So when signing into leases, so real estate is the second or third largest expense item for enterprise customers after the people cost. So it's a big chunk on that P&L, and so any chance that can optimise and really make sure that those big costly decisions are the right decisions and smart decisions definitely has a big impact. But then coming back down onto that day-to-day level, we tend to look at it, there's two factors that are driving the internal operational costs. One being the employee experience. So are they enjoying the environment? Do they want to come in? Do they feel productive and happy? And we know there's a direct correlation between employee engagement and productivity. But then the other aspect is also just the movement throughout the space. So how much time can be saved by not having to faff around trying to find a meeting room? We've certainly done some numbers as well, where if you do look at some of the average salaries in London, and 15 minutes of lost productivity per day, it does add up to about £7,000 per year, or just in cost for an employee. So it really does start to showcase the benefits of investing in technology to support that seamless experience.
And that 330-300 rule, which is JLL analysis, it's also backed by the Building Council, No, for those that are not familiar with it, it's $3 per square foot was their analysis on cost of energy and utilities within a building. $30 per square foot is the rental value, the real estate costs, and $300 per square foot is your staff. It is their productivity, their well-being. It's all those aspects that Jane's leading into there. In finding the right workspace and having the right building set up for your staff is impacting the $300 per square foot element of the building experience for the users as much as it is trying to right-size the overall real estate footprint.
So you both, Jane, you mentioned real estate being the second most expensive thing on the P&L, and you talked about the 330, 300 rule, focusing on the 330 element. Where are organisations at today in terms of data? Like, do they have too much data, not enough data to make these decisions on right sizing? What's your take on that, Jane?
Yeah, I think I start by saying, as a world, even consumers, let alone enterprises, we're becoming a lot more proficient in how we're actually going to consume data. So AI, a variety of tools, but we're data literate now. It varies a lot by organisation. I do think that a common theme is being data rich and insight poor. And so it is about how do you get the right data, be able to come through it, tell a story, and then turn it into meaningful, tangible aspects and align it to both like the strategic and operational requirements, because that's where it really does start to make a difference. Now, I also see too, there is data science and data analysts are a core component now of real estate teams. So, and again, it does depend on the type of organisation and where they're at in that maturity curve, because it is a journey that organisations do need to go through. It's not a turn the switch overnight. And it always comes back to what's the purpose of the workplace for that organisation, and therefore what is the right type of data, the right type of analysis, and the right type of application of it that does actually suit that business and that need.
I think we could probably resonate with that phrase, data rich, insightful, but Andy, I guess for you, when we talk about being data rich but insight poor, the whole point of this session is to talk about the metrics that matter. You know, how do we encourage our knowledge sharing and the metrics that truly matter to corporate real estate and corporate occupiers. I guess before we get into the nitty-gritty of that, we should probably do what I hate doing in every presentation, which is talking about semantics and definitions, because from my side of the fence, when I look at the market, people often use the words occupancy and utilization and attendance interchangeably. Sometimes they have their own agendas why they're doing that, maybe trying to justify why they want them to go back to the office or whatever that agenda is. Could we spend a little bit of time to circle back on what these terms mean and why it's important to get them right? I'll fire it at you first, but could pass to Jane as well. What is the difference between attendance, occupancy and utilization? Yeah, what do they really mean?
So I think the important part is that after we define these semantics, different data sources will empower the analytics that sit behind us. So we'll come to that later. Attendance is, from my perspective, attending to a building. How many people are coming to a building? It's not time measuring how long they're spending in that space. Occupancy is real time. Someone is in a particular space. They're able to feed that information back. Maybe it's presenting wayfinding or searching for that available desk. Whereas utilisation is now looking at it over a time period. So I'm now trying to work out how often a particular space is used over a time context. This is really insightful to understand the behaviours of people within the buildings. And then capacity utilisation is now considering the fact that room might be a room for 20 people, but I may have only had 4 or 5 people in that room. That's giving me another lens now. It's time-based and it's capacity-based. It's giving me even greater insights as to how my workplace is being used. I don't know if you'd agree with that.
Yeah, I do. We've got, I'll go into a slightly different lens with it. We've got our various technical definitions, but to me the most important thing is, does the organiser understand how they define their metrics or their categorisations? And we definitely spend a lot of time when we're onboarding a customer of how do we actually have that platform of understanding of what does utilisation mean to you? Is this utilisation a based on the denominator of your total workforce that is within the UK or London or allocated to this space? Or is it on the fire capacity space? Or is it on the number of workstations you're having? Because if you don't have the clarity on what is that denominator that you're working from, then how are you able to have that consistent reporting and really make the most of the insights to have that CEO conversation, have that IT conversation, have that facilities management? And critically, that's also really important when we're starting to look at rolling out across multiple sites, because as soon as you don't have the apples to apples, it becomes very difficult to bring that into a uniform platform and really have those thoughtful conversations that are balanced and are meaningful. And most importantly, as a workplace leader, you're trusted by your executive and the numbers that you're reporting, because you do have clarity on where that's coming from.
I think we're going to get deeper in a minute, a little bit on that chain of the importance of data normalization and high fidelity, high quality data from a company like yourself. But from your perspective both, do you see a lot of corporate occupiers making these big decisions based on just attendance data, like who's in, as opposed to how the space was used for a certain amount of time? I mean, Jay, I guess prior to XY being involved in the project, are clients just using like badge data as an example to see who's in the office?
Yes. So definitely there's a lot of transition from moving, hey, we've been using our badge data, that'll set us up within the office, and then just the realization of it's actually not telling the proper story. And I think one big pain point that often comes up, that badge data may sit with the securities teams. To get that into the hands of the workplace teams who are using it, sometimes it can take weeks. And so they don't have that real-time nature and really being able to understand it. Now the second part is how reliable is it? Particularly depending on, do you have to just badge in? Do you have to badge out? So therefore, how many people are in the space? What's the tailgating? How is that looking? What is the visitor management aspect? But I think that does give you the overarching thing of roughly how many people are in the box. But I think the maturity and where we're really starting to see things is, well, where are people in the space? What are they doing? And what's the right type of environment that needs to match to the working behaviour and the experience there?
That makes sense. I guess for companies that are really, really early on in the process, maybe have no understanding at all, then badge data has a place, right? It's low cost, it's free, most people have it because everyone's using some form of access control device, so it has a part to play in the story, but it's, like you said, Jane, points in time, not reliable, not that high fidelity data. Andy, what else, what other data sources are companies using outside of just badge data? I know we're going to talk about sensors in a minute, but Wi-Fi, booking data, what do you see out there?
They all have a part to play. Jane's comment about the accuracy aspects of access control data can be compromised. If you've not got speed gates mandating a one in, one out, then you get that fidelity. Someone is in the building. If you arrive at a floor, how many times does someone hold the door open for you and you walk in? You've lost that fidelity. But it does have a place. We, as a software company, and we consume data from varied sources and augment that data to give insights that are rich, overlaying the varied sources. Wi-Fi is one of them. Again, how many devices have I in my pocket? 2 mobile phones, 2 MAC addresses on the network. It doesn't tell me exactly which desk I'm sat on, exactly which room I'm in, because the accuracy of it is not giving me triangulation of the space. Booking data is great, but again, not all spaces are bookable. So every data source has a value, has a different cost of bringing into the building, and overall can play a part in the overall analytics that you wish to undertake on your workplace. It's just a case of selecting appropriate data sources for appropriate use cases. And I think it goes back to what you were saying, understanding what am I trying to understand about my real estate is the starting point of then deciding what technology or what data sources help me start to unpack the analytics that I need.
Makes sense. So James, from a machine vision sensor perspective, what does a sensor like XY sensor sensor give that booking data, Wi-Fi data, badge data doesn't? Could you just explain to the audience at a lay level, you're going to get information on guess, real-time flow and dwell times. Could you just talk to us a little bit about what you get with the sensor?
So at a starting base, a key product principles at XYSense and how we've built our sensor from day one, first and foremost, the highest level of security. So really taking out that fear and certainty of people feeling like big trucks. So XYSense name does come from it, is only XY coordinates that ever leave the sensor, but also too, just from that user of carrying a badge in, am I being checked, I have to do something as well that's physically tied to me in order to count. So one, we've taken that out. Two, the real time and accuracy component. So when you are making these decisions around how much space do I need, what spaces need, even to things like, is that meeting room actually available or should it be released? Getting those decisions right does require that real time and accuracy. So we're taking sightings every 2 seconds down to 30 centimetres of where are people in the space. And so that gives a lot of confidence and trust in the data that these decisions are being made on. And so from that, it's as you take all the data, and effectively the sensor is just the thing to collect the information. It's then what do you do with it? And so making sure that comes into a really tangible platform and insights as to, well, what are these decisions that you're making on it? Based on some historical trends, can you simulate it, but really trusting what is occurring across the space. So,
And you touched on a really interesting point there, Jane, about the use cases that you can do with the data. And what are iconic Mitsubishi Electric doing with that data? You know, we talk about workplace experience. When you start blending XYSense occupancy data with booking, could you talk to some of the use cases that you can start to, unveil as an organisation? Things like, I guess, Jane talked about meeting rooms being booked with no one turning up, or meeting rooms being booked by 50 people but only 7 are in the room. How do you see that change management piece working?
So I think there's 2 questions in there. One is the sort of next stage automation that may come from data. I think also to dial back to Jane's point, the data quality is really important. The use case that you're planning to undertake, if it's analytics, historical analytics, real time is maybe not as important. Maybe you can wait a week. Ideally, you're getting it live. If we've got live data coming in the system, and we talk about near real-time data, when we integrate to XY, we're bringing information back into mobile applications and signing applications in milliseconds. So it's near real-time. I walked in a room, I can indicate that room's in use. So these extended use cases come into not only analytics, but wayfinding. We're looking for spaces that are available. I can immediately signpost this on signage. I can start integrating into the building fabric and controlling my temperature controls in the room. I can start impacting my energy. I can start looking at putting fan coil units to setback mode so that I'm not burning unnecessary cooling in the summer if I've got a room that's booked but no one's come in that room as yet. So the use cases become endless. I always describe the building, if you've digitally enabled the building, and we look at building performance elements that connect to the assets in your building, as well as the workplace experience side, connected to the data such as XYSense. Once you've got that digital fabric for your building, the opportunities of automation, automated check-in, energy efficiency off this data become super powerful.
Okay, you've both sold me, I get it, it sounds really promising in terms of the capabilities, but where do these projects going to go wrong, Jane, in your experience? Is it integration challenges? Is it trying to give the workplace teams the data they need at their fingertips to go back to real estate and make decisions? Like, where do you see some of the pain points in rolling out this sort of technology?
it definitely starts with understanding what are you trying to do with the information. That old adage, if you don't measure it, you can't manage it. But also there's some things you're not going to change. And I think a good example on that is often we see sort of soft seating collaboration, like breakout areas, where you do just have 2 nice armchairs and they're sitting in the corner and it breaks out. Does that have to be covered? And so is it worth the investment in maximising every square inch? Because are you really going to just take 2 chairs away from the corner, which breaks up the entire aesthetic of the space, makes it a welcoming environment because they're only used 5% of the time, whereas a desk is used 50% of the time? No, we don't want workplaces where it's just desks and meeting rooms and they're stale. And really uninviting. So that's the first point of making sure that the coverage is going to match what is the value and the operations that we're trying to do. Because from our perspective, the worst thing that can take place is we've invested in these sensors, we're in a year into it, but we're not actually getting the ROI from the value. That's not a great client experience, it's not a great management experience, it's not a great experience for us as well. So really particular about what is the right coverage and what is the right scope for you. But then it is, again, the clarity on what are we trying to do with this. So sometimes it is a journey of, like, A, we need to understand the space. B, we want to really focus on maximising the efficiency of our meeting rooms. C, we may want to eliminate any need for desk booking. We just want to make it a seamless experience that employees can turn up. And then also to even, like, what's the CEO's current objective? So there's so many of these rollouts as well that are driven by the continuous pestering from the exec of, like, really, do we need this space? What are we trying to do? Like, how can we save costs? So definitely taking the emotion out of what can be very emotional conversations and being very objective in these business decisions.
Makes sense. And we talk about being data-led, but I guess that can somewhat almost drive you crazy if you become obsessed with trying to improve just one KPI. And we're talking about what metrics that matter. And I know you have a take on the balance between trying to improve utilization when sometimes it can have a negative impact, as James has talked about. I think you used the example with me before about client meeting rooms and the fact that they're always going to be needed, whether they're 100% utilized or not. It's finding that balance, isn't it, between serving the data and it serving you and the outcomes that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, that's a good point. It was I think it was a bit more specialist spaces when we were talking about that before. Client meeting rooms are essential. You know that sometimes you need to have a meeting space that will take up to X amount of people. So measuring the capacity utilization of it becomes only really a conversation of, do we ever really get to peak? Do we really need it that big? Could it be 2 meeting rooms and save us on moving into another floor of a multi-tenancy building, for example? But specialist spaces, you see people put full counters onto a big experience centre, for example. You know you're going to have it. You always want it. You want it there whether you're using it once a week, once a month, once a year. It's something in your business you're saying you're going to have. Back to your point, sensible decision making, put the investment where it matters and measure what's important to you.
Makes sense. I want to leave some time for some audience Q&A, so let's just try and think about how we summarise the conversation we've had so far. Jane, what would be one of your key takeaways to give to the audience when it comes to knowing when to start and what questions to ask before you start, investing in smart technology like this?
Yeah, it really is mapping out the organisational objectives. And I think something else that I want to add on as well, every organisation is different and your operations also need to match your culture and what is your business about. So a good example, we often say banks these days are largely IT firms, and a lot of that workforce is younger IT people. They need great technology, excellent screen setups, fast internet connection, and to be absolutely on because every second is counting when it does get into a trading scenario. Now the bedroom and their share houses is not the right place for it, so that is a very desk-bound organisation, and productivity in terms for that organisation is driven on that desk behaviour. Yeah, if you take another organisation, and I often see this with life sciences or other R&D and more creative organisations, the purpose of coming into the office is not to sit at the desk. It's actually to be connecting and collaborating around problems and projects and building up that team aspect. So again, I do say as well, it requires an understanding as well as to what is the right level and measure for success for your organisation, which is a cultural and an operational perspective, but also to longer term strategic as well as where is the things going to take place. So it's not
Andy, any KPIs or metrics that you see as sort of overrated or underrated? People that are a little bit obsessed with them, but actually they end up being a little bit of vanity metrics?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I was going to sort of focus on the aspect that if you start your journey focused so much on one problem statement, I think it's really important to understand what you're trying to solve when it comes to analytics and building, when it comes to investment in technology. But the other part that I often find myself talking to customers about, which is a penny drop moment, is understanding that this is always a journey. It's not a one-time fix-all. You don't come in and screw something to a wall and it answers all your problems. Your workplace evolves. You're constantly adapting your spaces to meet the right spaces for the business productivity to happen. So how do you deal with change management? What software platforms have you got in play? If you're putting a load of individual technology in that isn't interoperable, how do you start amplifying the benefit gains that come from your technology investment? So even though you might start small, identify one use case that you're working on, you need to be thinking about, well, what happens if we integrate these solutions together? Where do we go with our workplace experience solutions? And how do I make all this technology work really coherently together and select your vendors very appropriately with the mindset that you will evolve this. No project starts once and ends the next week and no one goes back to it for 4 years. It becomes a journey. Digital in a building, data in a building is a journey. It evolves as much as your workplace evolves.
Well, let's open it up to hear about some of the journeys that you guys might be on. I'm not sure if anyone's got any questions or comments to ask, but we've got a free roaming mic that can come round. Please raise your hand if you've got any questions. We'll try and answer them. Anybody with any questions that are burning right now? Could we get a mic over here, please?
It's coming.
I'm just wondering if you have any examples when you work with a client where they've managed to produce a metric that has been really kind of unexpectedly valuable for them, like an actual example. Not wanting to put you on the spot, but...
I like that first.
Yeah. So a key customer I work with, we effectively call it the vibe metric for them, but they've actually really reconfigured their dashboards because their point and main driver is how often is their utilization of the space in the right vibe space. So not too busy, not too quiet, and so it's actually looking almost more how often and when does it deviate out of that sweet spot, because that is what's going to drive that the office environment that they're seeking to bring together and connect. Like no one wants to go into a dead office and no one wants to go into a super crowded office. So that's one example that I've seen that's been a really key factor.
From my perspective, I think the one standout is with regards to seasonal change. So a customer of ours had done an assessment on what they thought their peak capacity was going to be in a building. They had a forecast pattern of where they felt they needed to open up floors in the building. As they progressed towards summer, they realised how many more people were coming into the office. And it really surprised them. And after analysis and doing some customer surveys with their staff, they've realised people working from home in the summer, we don't have air conditioning in our homes. It's cooler in the offices. So as they went from the cooler periods into the warmer periods, they found that their occupancy in their office spaces increased, and it totally changed their forecast.
There's one that I would add from the client that I manage, and it's a really boring operational one, but trying to compare energy usage to occupancy to have like an energy intensity score, so you understand not just what you're consuming in energy, but how does that compare to when the office is full versus when the office is quiet. And you talked about the use case of maybe just throttling back air conditioning and heating when the office is empty. It's just an easy use case to think about, but HVAC contributes to around 40 to 50% of the standard office's energy use. So just making those short savings by having that KPI of energy intensity is per occupant is really powerful, really important. Thanks for the question.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, I think we're almost out of time. One more.
So you spoke about integrating technology into operational and cultural use cases. So I come from a technology background, currently working in a role in real estate strategy, so I was really intrigued by that. Could you give some classic examples of how you started to solve a problem which rooted from operational or cultural lens, but slowly integrated it with technology lens, so it became part of something bigger?
So maybe if I jump in on this one, thank you. Great question. In buildings of old, systems were installed without any consideration to interoperability, without being on a corporate IT network, without having that cyber security applied. And there's lots of valuable data in there. By applying the right edge technology into the buildings that has that cyber security to normalise the data on edge, So we can connect to open protocols like BACnet, which are not designed to be on corporate networks. We can normalize that data in and bring that data out of the cybersecure world into a common data layer, which is then blending the likes of it's semantic model of your spaces. It's blending XY sense data coming into that model. It's blending which spaces are connected to fan core units or energy metering. And once you have all that data in one common framework, then your opportunities are endless on top of it. It becomes the building digital fabric of information within your property. Hopefully that answers the question. Thank you.
Yeah, we must stop speaking now. I've kind of came from my colleague here. So I just want to thank everyone for your time. Really appreciate you being part of this conversation. Thanks to Andy and Jane for also taking part. They're going to be sticking around for a little bit longer. So if you want to explore any more information or questions with us, we're just over at the Mitsubishi Electric Iconic stand. So please come by and have a conversation. Thank you everyone for your time and all the best on your journeys.